The Week 2 preview episode of the Bears Talk Underground is brought to you by MyBookie. Remember, who you're betting on is just as important as who you're betting with, and that's why I will always recommend MyBookie. Trust me, guys, they are the best bet this season. They've been in business for years. They have great reviews online, and their mobile site is easy to use. That is why I am urging you to make your way to MyBookie. You win, they pay. They have in-game live betting, the most rewarding player perks in the business. And for you fantasy guys out there, you can even bet the over-under on how many fantasy points a player will score in each game. Like tonight, who knew A.J. Green was going to score 3 touchdowns in the first half of this Bengals-Ravens game? Bananas. Join now and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Use promo code BEARS100 to activate the offer. Visit MyBookie online today. That's MyBookie, MyBookie. And don't forget to use my promo code BEARS100 when creating your account to claim up to $1,000 in free play. MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid. This week on the Bears Talk Underground. With Sunday night's collapse in Green Bay in their rear view, our beloved look ahead to their home opener. A Monday night date with Seattle Seahawks looking to avoid digging an early season hole and an 0-2 start for the 4th season in a row. Can the Bears regroup for Monday night, or are they forever shook? Spike Friedman from the Locked On Seahawks podcast joins us as our guest for the Week 2 preview episode of the Bears Talk Underground. Monday night cannot get here fast enough to see if our beloved can shake the funk of this Green Bay collapse off of us and get forever past the Aaron Rodgers lore of what he did on Sunday night. And what he did, of course, differs from who you talk to from one place to the next. Did he just have an amazing performance like Aaron Rodgers does on a bad knee? Or did he play on one leg? You know, I've seen that's written and said. I've heard it said many times. He did it on one leg. Did he really? Or did he just play on a bad? Did he just do it on a bad leg? I'm pretty sure he had 2 legs out there, and or if you want to be more specific, he had one good leg out there, and just. I don't know. It is drifting into sour grapes territory, and only because it won't stop. So I can't wait for week 2 to get here so Rodgers can either do something amazing or get smashed by the Vikings over the weekend, and then the Bears thing can at least go away for a little while. And that's why I want week 2 to get here. And I also desperately want Monday night to already get here so that we can see how the Bears respond to what happened on Sunday night. I think that will truly be the measuring stick on what this team is going to do this year. If we come out in our home opener, national television, against a decent football team, also starting out 0-1, also in a desperate situation, looking to avoid the 0-2 hole that the Bears are staring at. The Seahawks also lost on Sunday on the road at Denver. So it wasn't the collapse that the Bears had to suffer. It was very much a back and forth football game. They had the lead late in the game, and then Denver took the lead, to win it. But nonetheless, they had a chance to win their game on Sunday as well and couldn't pull the trigger, much like the Bears. And now both teams are 0-1 and looking to avoid that dreaded 0-2 hole, especially for both of these teams. Seattle, looking to get back to the playoffs. They were 9-7 a year ago. Like I said, looking to get back, and the Bears trying to prove themselves to be a playoff team. And as everyone will tell you, the statistics are heavily against you if you start 0-2 on making the playoffs. And so this is you would hate to think that the second week of the season is a must-win situation. But as far as the hopes and aspirations that this team has, as much as we talk about, and you'll actually hear in my interview with Spike Friedman from the Locked On Seahawks podcast, 2019, kind of is being, penciled in as that year that the Bears are going to be serious contenders. But, never mind that. It's 2018 now, and this team wants to make the playoffs this year. They don't want to, just play the season because it's here and then 2019 really ramp it up. The Bears want to make a mark in 2018, and this is the game that they need to bounce back from that loss in Green Bay. This is a very important contest. Maybe not in must-win territory, but you're definitely feeling some pressure, and you don't want to fall to 0-2 when you have the hopes and aspirations that this team does. So, like I said, Spike Friedman from the Locked On Seahawks podcast, having him back. We had him on earlier in the summer when we were doing our opponent preview episodes. Had a great conversation with him then. A very entertaining conversation had with him last night on Wednesday, and we have a conversation on how Spike is making it through what he forecasts to be not that great a season ahead for the Seahawks, and one of those things just happens to be his punter. And we have a nice little chit-chat about punters there. I was somewhere towards the middle of the conversation, I believe, that I think you guys will enjoy. So he is gushing over this punter, and it was just something that caught my eye over the weekend when I was watching the games. Spike and I, of course, we follow each other on Twitter, and he was just saying, he was writing love notes to this guy. Michael Dixon is his name, on Twitter, about how amazing he was. You'll hear him talk about, one of the greatest statistical games according to Pro Football Focus in the last 5 years. And he averaged 69 yards a punt against the Broncos on Sunday, and so on and so forth. So you get to listen to that. You'd think he'd gush over the performance Earl Thomas had, basically coming off the street. Russell Wilson, 3 touchdown passes and near 300 yards passing. No, he's going on and on about Michael Dixon, the punter for the Seahawks. So that was interesting to go through. So real quick, we're going to do our news and notes before we get to our conversation with Spike. There was a story, and I wrote it down when I read it so that I could mention it here on the show. And then when I went back to try to find it to get quotes and stuff, I can't find it now, which is kind of irritating me. But it was it was an article that was summarizing an interview or a radio spot or something that Jason Lockenfor, the NFL insider, did, and basically saying that the reason that the Bears didn't play Trubisky and their starters in the preseason was more so because they didn't think it would go well with Trubisky at quarterback, which is kind of a backwards way of thinking about, it doesn't make any sense. If they weren't happy with what Trubisky was doing, then why wouldn't they put him out there to get him the reps that he needs, the live game reps that he needs in order to get closer to where they want him to be? It doesn't make any sense. Why would they not put him on the field? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I mean, with especially with the first game that we have, Trubisky's going to be on a national stage going head to head with Aaron Rodgers. If you don't think it's going to go well, why is he the starter? Just look at the way that, the limited that we saw from Trubisky, and then the way that Chase Daniel kind of wrapped up the preseason. Wouldn't you think that if they weren't happy with Trubisky, that they would just start Chase Daniel? I mean, it's not like it was last year when we're trying to bench a $16 million quarterback in lieu of a rookie draft choice. Chase Daniel, I believe, is either making the same or just a little bit more money than Trubisky salary-wise this year. I mean, I know that we brought him in to be the Nick Foles to Trubisky's Carson Wentz, to have a quality backup, God forbid, if something happens, because the Eagles taught us that, if nothing else, last year. But, especially with the way they performed, and Chase Daniels got much better as the preseason went along, especially that dress rehearsal game against Kansas City. He was outstanding in the Kansas City game. So, he and all the second teamers just ran right over the Chiefs in that dress rehearsal game. It was very impressive to see that, and you walked away feeling better about Chase Daniel. If that was the case, why isn't Chase Daniel the starting quarterback if we're thinking it's not going? That's the thing that they popped up a few times in the article. They didn't think it would go well. That's why they didn't play him as much in the preseason. To me, that's completely backwards. If they didn't think it would go well, why wouldn't they put him out there more to get them the live game reps that he needs? It just makes no sense. And then he goes on to say that that's the reason that the Bears went out and got Khalil Mack and gave him quote-unquote quarterback money, because they don't think or don't feel or believe that they're going to have to pay Mitch Trubisky quarterback money a few years from now. Also ridiculous. They went out and paid Khalil Mack because Ryan Pace wants to win, and he wants to win now. And getting Khalil Mack is our best chance to do so. Number two, Khalil Mack filled a huge void that we had on the defensive side of the ball. We needed a bookend to Leonard Floyd. We needed a premier pass. We needed a pass rush, period. Leonard Floyd is going to be a good football player these days, and with Khalil Mack in tow, he might actually get there a lot faster than he would have on his own. Because Khalil Mack, especially after the performance he had in that Green Bay game, he's going to draw the attention and get Leonard Floyd the one-on-one matchups that he's going to need in order to blossom and become the pass rusher that he wants to become. And we do have this quarterback on the rookie contract for the next 3 to 4 seasons. That's why we went out and got Khalil Mack and paid him all that money now, because we can afford to before Trubisky gets his big money contract. Believe me, Ryan Pace believes 3-4 seasons from now, we're going to have to belly up to the table and pay Mitch Trubisky, because he's going to be the quarterback. He's going to be the Aaron Rodgers of this franchise. That's, if you ask Ryan Pace, that's what he would tell you. Not this nonsense that Jason Lockenfora is trying to get us to believe, is that, there's trouble in paradise as far as the Trubisky thing. And if Nagy truly believed that, why would he take that job? Why would he take the job? He's an offensive-minded guy. Why would he come to Chicago if he didn't believe Trubisky was his guy? You heard the guy gush over Trubisky about how Kansas City was looking at him, and if he was there, that they were going to think about trading up to get him, and so on and so forth. And they went out and got Mahomes instead, because Trubisky was off the board almost immediately thanks to the Bears. So it just it just didn't make any sense. It didn't make me nervous or anything like that. It just, like, who was telling you this? What's your source? It just sounded all like nonsense, because nothing he said made sense. He went out and got Khalil Mack and paid him quarterback money because they're not going to have to pay Trubisky quarterback money. Ridiculous. We went out and got Khalil Mack because he was the best defensive player, A, in the league, B, available, and C, filled a tremendous need that the Bears had on the defensive side of the football. If the Bears don't trade that pick, we're probably looking to use that pick on a potential Khalil Mack in next year's draft, because I don't know what the pass rushing free agency class is looking like, but it doesn't have a Khalil Mack in it. So we're probably looking to draft that pass rusher in the first round of next year's draft if we don't make that play for Khalil Mack. So, and you pay Khalil Mack because that's what it takes to get Khalil Mack. So, we have to pay the guy if we want to keep him. We got him locked up for the next 6 years. So I don't see any issue with what the Bears are doing, and it didn't throw up any red flags or anything like that. It was a bad night, or a bad half, actually. If the article was written after the first half, it doesn't talk about trouble in paradise or any of that nonsense. It's talking about what an amazing first half Trubisky had. Throwing the football and, making things happen with his feet and so on and so forth, that he looked polished, and he outplayed Aaron Rodgers in the first half of that game. But then the second half happened, and Trubisky got shaky, and some things didn't go well. He didn't turn over the football or make any dire mistakes or anything like that. He just didn't play as well as he did in the first half, and the Bears ended up losing the game. And now Lockenfora thinks that, the sky is falling in Chicago. It's not. So anyway, speaking of the Green Bay game, two of our players, Prince Amukamara, Anthony Miller, have something to say about that game. First, Amukamara saying that he doesn't think that he and his teammates are going to get over that loss. And I didn't really get to see or read the full context of what he said, but I'm hoping that it's one of those things. I'm hoping what he meant was it's always going to be in the back of our mind as motivation so that something like that never happens again. When you've got a team in the spot that the Bears had Green Bay in on Sunday, you put your foot down on their throat and you don't keep pressing until they're dead. You don't let them breathe life into themselves. You don't let them seep any air into those lungs. You just keep leaning until it stops. And that's what you got to do. And then Anthony Miller, gotta love this kid and his declarations, vows the Bears won't collapse again this season. So you gotta love the kid. I love the way he does that. And then finally, Coach Nagy saying that Roquan Smith has earned more playing time. So it didn't mention if that meant he was finally going to start, but it did. He did say that Roquan has earned more playing time. And you want to know what's so funny about this whole Khalil Mack thing was that even though I've been talking about Roquan Smith the whole week leading up to the game, my immediate thought when Danny Trevathan, got hurt for that minute or two and had to leave the game, and Roquan Smith comes running onto the field, my first thought was, oh yeah, Roquan Smith, of course. It wasn't like finally Roquan gets out there. It was like, oh yeah, we got Roquan Smith too. This is going to be great. And then on the first play, the kid goes there and gets a sack on his first play. But it's like once he gets out there and becomes part of the mix, I really do think that defense is going to be something to behold. Not that it wasn't on Sunday night with Kwiatkowski out there, but obviously Roquan takes it up a notch being out there on every play. So Nagy says he's earned more playing time. He only played 8 snaps on Sunday night against Green Bay. I think he will easily surpass that on Monday night. And then the last thing I have for you guys is the injury report for this week. I guess today is the first day that they practice since they have the extra day to get ready for the game on Monday. Houston Carson, whose first name is DeAndre Houston Carson. That's his first name. DeAndre Houston Carson did not practice, still nursing that bad forearm that he busted in the preseason. And Kyle Long did not practice today with an ankle injury. I hope it's not the one that's been bothering him for the last 2 seasons. And I'm hoping that there was like ankle soreness or something like that, so they gave him the day off kind of thing. Because the last thing that I wanted to see was Kyle Long's name on this damn injury report again. Bryce Callahan was limited with a knee injury, and Daniel Brown was full go with a shoulder injury. On the Seahawks side, there's a lot of names on this list. Guard DJ Fluker was out with a hamstring. KJ Wright, the linebacker, and Bobby Wagner both out with injuries. Wright with a knee, Bobby Wagner with a groin. Doug Baldwin was out with a knee injury. They say he's going to be out a few weeks, so the Bears won't have to worry about him on Monday night. Trey Flowers was out with a hamstring injury today, and Earl Thomas looks like he was just he was being rested today. Both Deion Jordan, the defensive end, and safety Bradley McDougall were both limited with knee injuries, and Frank Clark, the pass rusher for the Seahawks, was full go despite an elbow injury. So there's your injury report for Thursday, the only day that both teams have practiced thus far this week. So there you have it. And before we get to our conversation with Mr. Spike Friedman from the Locked On Seahawks podcast, I want to remind you guys to join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar up to $1,000 in free play. Use the promo code BEARS100 to activate the offer. Visit MyBookie online today. That's MyBookie, MyBookie, and don't forget to use the promo code BEARS100. MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid. And now, without further ado, me and my new friend, Spike Friedman from the Locked On Seahawks podcast, previewing the Week 2 matchup on Monday night between our beloved Chicago Bears and the Seattle Seahawks. Usually Week 2 games aren't what people consider to be must-win, but when you start 0-1, You don't want to fall into an 0-2 hole, and that's what both teams, the Bears and the Seahawks, are looking at on Monday night. And here to help me talk about this Week 2 matchup, very interesting, Monday Night Football, national television, two 0-1 teams looking to avoid an 0-2 hole. Spike Friedman from the Locked On Seahawks podcast. Spike, welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
So let's talk about this, the Broncos game on Sunday. We were talking about it just briefly here before we got started. I was kind of watching the ticker, go along throughout the game on Sunday in the afternoon, and noticed that as far as the ticker was concerned, it looked like it was very much a back and forth. It was 7-7 at one time. I know this Brandon Marshall, one of my favorite Bears of all time, caught a touchdown pass like in the second half to tie it up at 17. You guys had the lead late, but then it finally came across the ticker. Denver won the game. And how did that all happen?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see with this Seahawks team is that it's very thin, and that a lot of times in years past, especially at the peak of the Legion of Boom era, the Seahawks finished games really strong. And it was a combination, on the one hand, it's Russell Wilson magic a lot, but the other big factor was defensive line depth. The pass rush got better. The run defense got better as the game went on. I mean, in our Super Bowl winning season, Michael Bennett played something like 55, 60% of the snaps. We had that much depth on the defensive line. That's not the case anymore. This team is shallow. And when it came down to the end of the game, the Broncos' offensive line bossed the Seahawks' defensive line and was able to really keep running the ball, picking up 4 or 5 yards to carry on the ground and keeping Case Keenum clean. And that doesn't bode well. Mm-hmm. So the big story for me was that the Seahawks didn't close that game well. And then you can add in a random fumble from Russell Wilson that blew a lot of time off the clock. There were a lot of issues going on. Really comes down to this Seahawks team is just okay. The Denver team isn't great either. And when it came to who could control the clock, Denver just was a much better team at the end of that game.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. Time of possession, 35-25 in favor of the Broncos. And, I mean, because it's statistically, it doesn't really, weigh too heavily in Denver's favor. 470 to 306 in total yards, that's a big deficit. Of course, where the big margin of error there is the 146 yards the Broncos had to 64 for the Seahawks. And I was looking at the stats just a minute ago.
And that's the rushing yards?
Yes, that's the rushing yards. And that Freeman and Lindsey both had 71 yards apiece for the Broncos, averaging just under 5 yards a carry. Where in the Seahawks, you had Carson had 51 yards, and then your top draft pick, that Rashard Penny, that running back that you guys definitely needed instead of like a pass rusher or offensive line depth or something like that, was 7 carries for 8 yards on Sunday. Yeah. So made a solid debut as a Seahawk on Sunday.
Yeah, I came on your podcast this summer and talked about how much I did not like that pick. And I said, even if Rashard Penny played at an MVP to Todd Gurley level, I still would question that pick because of the value of a first rounder in terms of longevity on your team and just how few running backs can provide value after 5 seasons with the same team. Sure. It just doesn't happen very often. Rashard Penny's not a generational talent. Now, I don't think we've seen the best of him. I don't think he is a below replacement level rusher. He was coming back from a hand surgery. He didn't look like he was at full speed. But Chris Carson looked great. Chris Carson is a weapon. Chris Carson, I don't know if you saw the highlight of him hurdling a cornerback and going off for 20 yards. He was busting off explosive runs. He had a big play called back for a holding penalty that wasn't necessary to spring him. Carson looks excellent. And looking ahead to this matchup with the Bears, he is going to be the guy getting the bulk of the snaps. Pete Carroll said as much in his press conference on Tuesday. And he's going to be a threat in both the passing and running game. And the question is, can the Seahawks get a screen game going? We know the Broncos have a great pass rush with Von Miller. We know you guys now have a great pass rush with Khalil Mack and potentially Roquan Smith getting more snaps. You guys are pretty scary up front.
Yeah.
Can we keep you off balance with Chris Carson? And the fact that our first round pick, especially in a year where we didn't have a second rounder, and looking backwards, we didn't have a second rounder last year either, to basically use our one major draft asset on what's going to be a rotational running back. It's a catastrophe. It was a bad pick the moment it happened. Doesn't look better after 1 week. Hopefully it gets better.
Sure. I mean, we did spend some time on that when I had you on over the summer, and it's just like he wasn't the best player on the board at the time. There were so many other players there at the time that would definitely not only would have been ranked ahead of Penny, but as far as other players that would have filled other spots, need areas. For you guys that would have been a better selection at the time. I know we're only one game into it, but it definitely, you like you said, you weren't happy with the pick then. You're definitely not happy with it now, especially seeing some of the deficits that took place on Sunday. I see that Wilson got sacked 6 times on Sunday, and I'm sure that those weren't the only 6 times that he was under pressure, correct?
No, they weren't. I will say, and this is a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I don't think the Seahawks offensive line was as disastrous as the stat line looks. A couple of those sacks were coverage sacks.
Okay.
And those are issues in and of themselves.
Sure.
The fact that with Doug Baldwin injured, the fact that our receiving core is leaning hard on Brandon Marshall, who, when he was with the Bears, was a world-class receiver, is now 34,
right,
and certainly passes prime. Tyler Lockett, you mentioned, an explosive guy, but not a down-to-down sort of bell cow receiver. Similarly, Jimmy Graham, we don't have that weapon who can pick you up 8 to 12 yards. We don't have Golden Tate anymore. With Baldwin out, it's really, really tough for us to just move the ball with a quick passing game. Quick passing is how you beat a guy like Von Miller, who's going to dominate on the edge. He got his. I mean, Von Miller absolutely got his. Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle isn't capable of dealing with Von Miller down to down, but he did okay considering how egregious a mismatch that is. Russell Wilson spun into 2 monster sacks, and this is a weird take, but this, like you said, this Seahawks offense has a bunch of big explosives, but they're not getting those. They're neither on the ground nor in the passing game. They're picking up like easy 5-yard gains, easy 7-yard gains. And it's actually weirdly okay because of our best rookie, Michael Dixon, our punter. Russell Wilson at one point got sacked. Like he spun into a sack that shouldn't have been a sack at all. It ended up being like a 14-yard loss, I believe. And then Michael Dixon immediately flips field position with his punting. I think he pins him on like the 9 from his own 25. I mean, it was just like lunatic punting genius that we have right now. So we're weirdly set up to be this high explosive but also very frustrating offense. But we're poised to survive it if our defense can step up. To me, that's where the hole is. The fact that we're starting rookie Trey Flowers at cornerback, the fact that our pass rush is Deion Jordan and Frank Clark and nobody else, It's scary. I mean, Quentin Jefferson's there. There are other guys. But, to me, the gaping holes on this team are second cornerback and edge rusher. It's not good enough in either of those spots, and that's tough in this league. If you can't, the Bears, they can get to the passer, and they got Kyle Fuller. You guys have those weapons. You have some questions of your own.
Sure.
But, when I look at the Seahawks team, I'm like, on defense. Weirdly, the offense is, I'd like another wide receiver, but there wasn't, Calvin Ridley probably wasn't the guy. I don't know. All of that long version of maybe the offensive line isn't the problem right now.
And you mentioned the big play explosion. That's something that we talked about before we started recording, was that, you see the score was 27-24. Russell Wilson threw for nearly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did have a couple of picks in there, but 3 touchdowns, nearly 300 yards. And then you look at the stat line. Your rookie, he's a rookie, right? The tight end?
Yeah, Will Dissly.
Will Dissly, 105 yards on 3 catches, but 66 of it came on one play. Lockett, we talked about a second ago, only 59 yards receiving, but 51 of them came on the touchdown reception. Like I said, Wilson, 298 yards on only 19 completions. So, I mean, he was 33 attempts, so per attempt, it's not that fantastic, but per completion, it's actually really good as far as like those are big chunks of yardage you're getting through the air. And I don't know how much of the game you saw on Sunday night, but in the second half, that's how Green Bay beat us. I mean, we gave up big plays. It wasn't a dink and dunk, 9-minute drive, 15 plays, averaging 5 yards a play or anything like that. It was Aaron Rodgers throws a 40-yard touchdown pass. Randall Cobb turns a 10-yard hitch into a 75-yard run, and so on. That's what killed the Bears in the second half, was their inability to stop the big play. The Seahawks kind of have to be licking their chops after watching that second half tape this week.
Yeah, I mean, the big question is, can we scheme Russell Wilson to have the time to let those big plays develop?
Sure.
Like that, when I look at I did happen to watch all that game on Sunday night, and I mean, as a neutral observer, it was wild. And I was really impressed, obviously, with the Bears' defense for the first 3 quarters of that game. And I mean, at a certain point, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, and there's only so much you can do against him.
Right.
You should have brought down Randall Cobb in that 2 minutes, but that things happen. Things happen. I don't mean to rub that in. But when I watch it, you go, oh man, they're dominating the line of scrimmage early. They're hurting Aaron Rodgers. But what happened on Sunday with the Seahawks was Russell Wilson was very bad under pressure. And usually he is one of the league's best passers under pressure. He's had seasons where his quarterback rating under pressure is 80, 90. Like he's playing like an average quarterback even when he's taking hits. I believe on Sunday his quarterback rating under pressure was like 32. And when he wasn't pressured, it was really high. And to me, on the one hand, you could be concerned that that's an issue going forward. For me, it was just like you watch those individual plays and you're like, man, Von Miller turned pressure, like quote unquote pressure, into something truly devastating a few times. I mean, he at one point ripped the ball away from Chris Carson. He was just right there when Russell Wilson was about to spin and make magic happen. He shut down a couple different plays, and Chubb too. I mean, that Denver edge rush is really scary. And so my question is, can the Seahawks prevent that from happening again when you've got a guy like Khalil Mack who has all those same skills and instincts? Can we keep Russell Wilson in good positions when he's under pressure? If Russell Wilson's quarterback rating under pressure against the Bears is 80, that's bad for you guys. And that means, those explosives are going to happen. We're going to hit you hard. Even if Khalil Mack gets him a couple times.
Right. And it was, I mean, as far as the whole thing with his, I hate to use the word decline, but decline under pressure. I mean, is that a fact that the offensive line has been an issue for the Seahawks for a couple of years, and he might be getting, I don't want to say gun shy or anything because I don't think he's scared back there, but it's like maybe it seems like instead of being so cool because being under pressure was a rarity at the beginning of his career, and now it seems to be the norm and not the exception. That maybe he panics a little too early, or he abandons and relies on his feet before his arm, whereas before his feet were what hurt you. Keeping him in the pocket was most important, because kind of like Aaron Rodgers. I mean, even though Wilson is a much better runner, but you want to keep Rodgers in the pocket and make him hurt you from there. If you get him rolling out and playing street ball, he's the best quarterback in. Well, I think he's the best anyway, but he's the best quarterback in football when he's moving, and that was kind of what Russell Wilson did. Now that he's under pressure more than he's not, I mean, do you think that really is affecting him?
That's the fear. That is absolutely, there is a not insignificant contingent of the Seahawks fandom that thinks Russell Wilson's maybe not progressing the way he could, and that's a big reason why. I don't know that we know enough yet. And I don't know that we're going to know enough to be able to really assess that till maybe even like week 6 of this year. Starting off the year against Von Miller, against Khalil Mack, against Aaron Donald, like it's tough. Chandler Jones is mixed in there. I mean, like those are big time rushers, and it's tough. It's tough to say. I mean, and Russ has these games where he's a little inaccurate. He's a little happy-footed. And even with that against Denver, I mean, one of those interceptions came on the last throw of the game where he's thrown up basically a Hail Mary. But B, we lost by 3 on the road at Denver, who wins every home opener for the last 8 times they've had one. Like, that's not a disaster per se. Like,
Right.
but again, you look at that stat sheet and you're like, on the one hand, this should have been a Seahawks win, and on the other hand, this should have been a disaster, and you sort of end up in the middle. And that's sort of what I think this Seahawks team is like a team that's taking a sort of unusual path to being kind of average. And that means on any given week, Russell Wilson magic can show up, and we're going to beat some teams that are going to be surprising this year. I think we're going to take one from the Rams. I think Will Dissly is going to have a big game against the Rams at some point based on what Jared Cook did with Derek Carr for Oakland on Monday.
Sure.
And so, but when I think about this team also, like, we're going to have games where quarterbacks like Case Keenum, I mean, he should have thrown 4 interceptions, but he also threw for a ton of yards. He had all the time in the world and was beating us on the outside. Like, that's new for us. Richard Sherman ain't here anymore. Earl Thomas still is here. Earl Thomas and Brad McDougald play out of their minds at safety. They had 3 picks, should have had a 4th, and really shut down the middle of the field. But those edges, they are not airtight the way they used to be. So we're just a high variance 8-8 team, if you ask me right now. And we got a tough schedule. So it could end up being 7-9. It could end up being 6-10. So we might be licking our chops based on what the Bears did against the Packers and how this matchup sort of could go, and it could really go either way. I mean, it could be the sort of game where Trubisky has time all day long, and Trubisky with time is a pretty dangerous thing. We saw that. He's another guy rolling out of the pocket, looks really good.
Yeah.
It could be the sort of game where we get just enough pressure on him. He makes bad reads, throws the ball into the ground. Russell Wilson runs away with it. It could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's most interesting to me about that is that we saw 2 different teams from the Bears on Sunday night. We saw the team that Bear fans fantasized that this team would be all off season, and that was even before the Khalil Mack trade. We fantasized that with all these weapons on the offensive side, we still got a solid defense. We added Roquan Smith to that. We're going to be in good shape on defense. Now it's time for the offense to step up. We're going to surprise some people and make some moves this year. And then you add Khalil Mack to that. We were all just frothing at the mouth for the game to take place once they made that move last week. But then in the second half, we were inefficient on offense. We couldn't finish drives. Defense started giving up the big plays. And that's what's intriguing is that we see a team in Seattle that did come up short on the road in Denver last week, but where you had success is where the Bears failed the most this past Sunday, which was in stopping big plays from happening. And in a game like that, Green Bay, I don't want to say they got lucky, but you pull off a couple of big plays the deficit went from 20-0 to all of a sudden the Bears are behind with 3 minutes to go. It can happen just that fast. They scored all 21 points in the fourth quarter. So it's not over until it's over when you have that big playability.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fair to say that the Packers got lucky given the Fuller drop pick. You go for it, but like they make their own luck, and you make your own luck. If you go for it on 4th down late in the game, maybe you get that and just ice the clock. It's tough to say either team got lucky. And then you look at the Seahawks-Broncos game. Similarly, look, we gave up 2 dumb big plays that Seahawks defense don't normally give up. We don't usually give up passing explosives on the sideline. We gave up 2 big ones that turned into touchdowns, and it was Case Keenum throwing the ball to, not Emmanuel Sanders. I was like, what is happening right now? What is this Seahawks defense? I think that, this Bears-Seahawks matchup, again, 2 high variance teams in a lot of ways. I'm interested in hearing from you real quick.
Sure.
Where are you on Trubisky right now? How do you feel about that performance? Do you look at that first half and go, we got something here? Or do you look at that second half and go, uh-oh, maybe we don't have something here? Or is it somewhere in between still?
It's a 6 in one and half a dozen at the in the other, because you can't ignore the fact that they barely played throughout the preseason.
Yeah.
The Bears weren't the only team that adopted that credo of basically not putting their starters out there for lack of a better term. The first game of the season might as well have been the dress rehearsal game, because the Bears didn't play anybody in the dress rehearsal game or the I mean, we played 5 preseason games. The starters saw the most time playing the first half of Game 3 against Denver. That was 3.5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, before the Packer game. So a lot of people maybe chalking it up to lack of actual game reps. But as far as Trubisky himself, I was skeptical of the pick when we made it, more so because of the team we had built around him than the kid. I didn't really know much about Trubisky. All I know was that in the tape that I did see of the quarterbacks, if the Bears had to pick one, I didn't want Watson because I thought that Watson was a college quarterback that's going to have his struggles at the NFL level, a la Vince Young or any other running Robert Griffin, those guys that are, as dangerous on their feet as they are with their arm and such. It's not a longevity type of career that you're dealing with. And he proved that almost immediately by blowing out his ACL 8 weeks into his first season. So, it's I still wish the best. I want him to prove me wrong, but that's why I didn't want him on my team. And I like Trubisky, and what I saw from him on film, he was the guy that I wanted. So if we had to take one, he was the one that I wanted. And then when I saw him on the field, even in that first preseason game against the Broncos, his very first preseason game, he comes in, runs the 2-minute drill, and this was after Mike Glennon had 3 or 4 of the most disastrous offensive drives of that any quarterback has ever had. And this is a guy that we just paid. We paid him more money than we did Jay Cutler to come to the team and take it over. And this guy was garbage out of the box. And then here comes Trubisky, this rookie, and leads 2 touchdown drives, including running the 2-minute drill before halftime. And from then, people are like, why isn't this kid starting? After everything, like Glennon is a joke. And he proved that to be the first 4 games. It's like everything that we've seen from Trubisky, I just have a gut feeling about that. I believe he is the guy. I believe that. And we saw how he was in the first half. He was comfortable. He was slinging it all over the place, making plays and so on and so forth. In the second half, it's like I said, it's 6-1 and half a dozen the other as far as who I put the blame on. I put blame on Nagy. I think maybe we should have run the ball a bit more in the second half than we did. Not even so much to like protect the lead or run the clock or anything like that, but to take the onus off of Trubisky, or maybe take the option. Some of those RPOs, maybe take the option away from him. Run the ball. You have Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. Run the ball, and because the third quarter, even though we only gave up 1 field goal in the third quarter, I think that's where we lost the game, was in the third quarter, because the Bears were on the field for like 10 plays in the third quarter, and that's the quarter where the Packers were on the field for like 12 minutes out of 15 or something like that, and wore the defense out. It's like we went on this long drive that we stopped them. They kick a field goal. We throw 3 passes and punt it right back, and our defense, that was just on the field for like 7 minutes, has to go right back out there again. So it's like we didn't do the defense any favors in the third quarter, and I think that maybe that's why we lost steam in the fourth. And, it doesn't all fall on Trubisky. He definitely made some mistakes when the game was on the line there at the end, but I still believe overall we're going to be fine with him.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And when people are breaking down the mistakes he made, they weren't big turnovers. They weren't pick sixes.
He didn't throw any picks in the game. He didn't turn the football over at all.
Exactly. It was like, he didn't hit this pass. He didn't see this thing opening for a second, or, and that's stuff that can really develop. I still think he's got the potential to be really good from the outside. I was just super curious from the inside. Look, and also when you're trying to play a field position game late, like, you don't have Michael Dixon. You don't know what it's like to have the greatest punter of all time. Like we feel.
Man,
it's been one game and we're all losing our minds. But
following your tweets, man.
I love him so much.
I think I wish I knew someone who lived in Australia so I could talk more about Michael Dixon or something like that. Wasn't that one of your tweets this week?
It's so real. Yes, it 100% was, and it is real. Like, Football Outsiders put his punts at worth 3.8 points in week 1 alone. He had a more valuable punting game in week 1 than any punter did in any single game last year. I think it was like the second best punting game in like the last 5 years to like some Johnny Hecker game. I mean, he's already, and he missed one. He totally shanked one punt, and he still put up that level of value. He is unbelievable, and he's only going to get better. And the thing about, and like, I'm knocking on every piece of what I own when I say this, which is crazy to say about a punter, but punters usually don't get the yips the way kickers do. You know, like Vikings fans were saying the same stuff about Blair Walsh when he came up, and Lord knows I've experienced what it's like to root for Blair Walsh. It ain't fun. There's no reason to think Michael Dixon is going to become Blair Walsh. Like, this kid is awesome. He's changing the punting game. He averaged 59 yards per punt. He had a 69-yarder, and it went further in the air. It hooked out of bounds at the 6. You know, like, it's just wild stuff. It's just wild. I mean, I couldn't be more thrilled. And in a season that for the Seahawks is just going to be less good than any of our most recent seasons. I mean, even last year, which wasn't great, we were still 9-7, and frankly, going into Week 12, we had a shot to make a run at the thing until the injuries just piled up and the Rams went into another gear.
Right.
This year, that ain't this team. We got to have the little things to be happy about. Dixon's a big one. Chris Carson's a big one. Will Dissly's a big one. Some of those young defenders, if they can come together, if Trey Flowers can become a good CB2, amazing. That makes a year that for Seahawks fans is a little anomalously not great. It can make it really fun, even if we don't end up being a playoff team.
Yeah, you just I was just like reading your tweets about Dixon throughout the week, and at first I didn't remember who Dixon was, and then when you mentioned he was an Australian player, I was like, that's got to be the punter.
Yeah,
like, that has to be. There's like, and then that's when I started really watching the ticker on the Seahawks game. I was like, are the Seahawks getting their asses kicked or something? Why is he going nuts about this kicker? And I'm looking at it, it's like, well, it's 17-17. What's he going nuts about this punter for? And it's just it's like, what is going on? Like,
the most valuable punting game any punters I mean, he's so good. He's so good. Like, I can't express enough how cool and good he is. He has 9 different punts. On the last punt of the game, he threw out a different punt, and I'm convinced it was trying to bait Pac-Man Jones into a fumble. Pac-Man Jones let it bounce and ended up rolling into and like stopping dead on the 18 back when we were like backed up from our end zone. But I'm convinced he hits these punts with like a side spin on them, and guys can't catch it. Tyler Lockett fumbles it every time in practice. Like, we had, I think, 2 or 3 fumbles in the preseason off of punts. Guys can't catch this one punt that he does. And I'm pretty sure that's why Pac-Man Jones let this punt bounce. Is he's like, I ain't catching this.
Well, I guess there's something to watch for when Tariq Cohen is back receiving punts on Monday night.
I mean, that's going to be a great matchup. And Cohen is just an incredible player, and I think he, on offense, is going to be able to exploit a Seahawks defense that's likely still going to be down KJ Wright, who is our screen whisperer. Shaquem Griffin and Austin Calitro are both young guys. They're both very athletic. They've got some skills, but their heads aren't there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the screen game is going to be really devastating against us. I feel like Tariq Cohen is going to feast potentially. And so hopefully we can get in his head with the punting game, keep him on his heels.
Well, you sound like you sound like me, actually, because several years ago when I was still in college at Western Illinois University, we had the world's greatest punter.
That's right. You had Mike Cyphers,
Mike
right?
Cyphers, who got drafted by the Chargers, ironically, also in the 5th round, and punted for them for a decade and a half, just about, because he just retired only like 2 or 3 years ago at the most, is when Mike finally hung it up. But he was the super punter out in San Diego for years, and the things that he did that I witnessed with my own eyes in the flesh, live and in person. Just banana, and we were like, I remember talking with my buddy Ryan Simmons. It was like, dude, we've been talking a half hour about our punter.
Yep.
Our punter was doing like some of the most amazing thing, and that team was number 2 in the country, went deep into the playoffs, and so on and so forth, and beat Tony Romo in his last college football game in the first round of that playoffs, and everything like that. And we spent a half hour talking about the season that our punter had. And that's how amazing Cyphers was when I got to watch him play every week during his senior season. You sound like me talking about Cyphers back then. That's what you sound like talking about Dixon. And
I love Mike Cyphers. One of my best friends in college was a big Chargers fan. So I think I was a freshman the year he got drafted, and like was aware of him his whole career and how good he was. I think he was a little underrated. He didn't make
He
too
didn't
many.
make a Pro Bowl. He did not make
Yeah,
one, and I was
really
always
should've.
disappointed about that. Yeah.
He probably should have made an All-Pro or two. But I'll put it to you this way: Mike Seifert's career punting average, I just looked this up, was 45.3. His best season punting average was 48.3. Michael Dixon 59.5 in his first game. like that's exactly what we're doing. I mean, we were talking about the LeBron to Johnny Hecker's Kobe. And he's going to make the world forget about Johnny Hecker, which for me as a Seahawks fan is all I need, because Hecker has tormented us, just tormented us. And I like that we're fighting fire with fire. Meanwhile, the Rams are going out and acquiring Marcus Peters, who made Amari Cooper just completely invisible, and getting Ndamukong Suh and like Brandon Cooks, and they're going to probably win 12 games this year. And we're going to fight to win 7 with our punter. But we are going to out-punt the Rams this year. So help me God.
You know, they also made a play for Khalil Mack?
Yeah, I read that.
I was like, with what? They've traded every draft pick they have. What did they have left to give away for Khalil Mack? But I think, thankfully that didn't happen. But I was like, when I heard the Rams were in serious contention, I was like, with what? How could they have done that? So, but anyway, real quick before we go, let's talk about Earl Thomas.
Please.
It was one of the big stories throughout all of training camp. It wasn't really so much a big deal during the summer, the last time that we talked. We did talk about it for a moment, but as the summer went along, as training camp went along, it was something that actually just began to fester. And even when he'd said he was coming back, he did so by giving the Seahawks quite a poke, by saying the disrespect is noted and will not be forgotten. It reminded me, how old are you?
I'm 32.
32. So I don't know if you're old enough to remember back in the early 90s when Prince, the singer, was at odds with his record company, and he wrote the word slave on his face when he was performing on the MTV Music Awards or something like that.
I do remember that.
It was very reminiscent of that. I'm coming to play for this organization I have no love for. I'm going to go out there because I have to and because I'm a player and a teammate and I want to be there for my guys. But, for lack of a better phrase, the Seahawks can kiss my ass.
There's a little bit of that, absolutely. I think he is rightly disappointed in the fact that they haven't extended him. I mean, in the past, when we've had elite guys coming up for their next contract with 1 year left on the deal, that's when we make that deal happen. There's no reason we shouldn't make Earl Thomas the highest paid safety in football. We all saw how hard Harrison Smith balled out this weekend.
Yeah.
PFF said Harrison Smith was the second highest rated safety and Earl Thomas was the first. That's how well Earl Thomas played. And that's without a training camp.
Yeah, I was going to say, just coming off the street that he did that.
Exactly. I mean, he had a pick. He tipped another drop pick to McDougald. I mean, he missed one play all game. He missed one play, and that is playing with a host of new guys around him. Trey Flowers is new. Shaquem Griffin is new. Shaquille's playing on the other side. Calitro's in there, a whole new passer. I mean, it's a new team. Barkevius Mingo was new, and he was in coverage a lot. So you got a whole new unit around this guy. No preseason, still comes in as the highest-rated safety in football in week 1. That tells you all you need to know about Earl Thomas and how crucial he is. We don't have Earl Thomas on the field. Literally, we didn't play him every snap. I believe he was rested 10 snaps. In those 10 snaps, yards per play doubled compared to when he was on the field.
Wow.
I mean, that is as stark as it gets in terms of a guy's value. So, yeah, he should be noting the disrespect. I will also say that after the game, they interviewed him, and he was like, look, I gotta make this money. It's too much money to sit out. He's not going to pull a Le'Veon Bell.
Sure.
But he also talked about playing for his teammates, and you saw how effective he was on the field. He looked awesome. And Pete Carroll, since he's come back, has said all the right things, and they waived all the fines associated with missing training camp.
Good for them.
And, man, they should just pay him. Man, they should just make him the highest paid safety in the NFL. But even if they don't, even if this is a swan song for him, he's going to play his heart out. Man, that's what Earl Thomas does. Earl Thomas isn't, I loved having Richard Sherman on the Seahawks. Richard Sherman, now that he's gone, is sniping and all this stuff in the press. And that's not Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas cares first and foremost about football, even above ego, even above anything else. He is a grinder. He's a football player. He's awesome. He's like, and I'm a stats nerd guy, but like Earl Thomas is grit personified. He's that guy. And he also has the great stats, so it works out perfectly. But I'm like, pay this guy. You see what he does. You see the impact he makes. Unless we are tanking, and we're not tanking. If we were tanking, we'd have done some things a little differently. You got to have him out there, and you should pay him, and you should keep him there for the next 4 years.
How old is Earl now?
29, I believe.
29. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like right on the edge.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, obviously he's not taking a drop in productivity. The guy literally came off the street and was the best safety in football this past weekend. So, I mean, I don't see the risk in. I mean, even if it's short term, like 2 or 3 years, it's a deal worth making.
Yep. Well, and I mean, the way you can structure a deal that locks you in for 2 years, that makes him the highest paid safety. That third year costs you something to get out of. That fourth year doesn't. Like this isn't rocket science. Just look at the Eric Berry deal and give him $2 million more or so. You know what I mean? Like, do it. Like, it's not rocket science. And we've got the space coming open. Like next year, this team has cap space, and it's similar to the Raiders. It's like, if you're not going to spend it on this guy, who are you going to spend it on?
Right.
Like they got these first round picks, and they're going to be going to get the next Khalil Mack, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. Like similarly, we could go into the safety market trying to get the next Earl Thomas. He ain't out there. There are not a lot of Earl Thomas. There's one other Earl Thomas out there. He's playing for Minnesota. They ain't letting him walk anytime soon.
Right. I
mean, yeah.
That was kind of the rationale when people were wondering. It's like, I know that the Raiders have something that the Bears don't have, and that's a $25 million a year quarterback. And so, I mean, to pay another guy $25 million a year, that's going to put a strain on your salary cap. But how many Khalil Macks are there? And you're taking the risk that you're going to be able to replace a Khalil Mack with a cheaper version with the draft pick that you're getting from the Bears. It's just like, it's not a risk that I would have. I mean, he's a generational player, and you don't give that guy up. You don't. I mean, you just don't do it.
Generational player is exactly the right term. And this team got burned on the Cam Chancellor deal, and I wonder if that's why they're a bit gun shy. Cam Chancellor was very good. Cam Chancellor was not a truly generational player. Cam Chancellor's not going to be in Canton. Earl Thomas is going to be in Canton. Earl Thomas might be in Canton on a first ballot if he has another couple of great years. And that's something that not a lot of safeties do. I think it's like only 2 or 3 ever. He's in that conversation. And again, it's like at certain positions, generational talent matters. Running back, you only spend for the generational talent. You don't spend it on Rashad Penny. Safety, you only spend on the generational talent. That's Earl. Pass rushers, when you got a generational talent, that's second only to having Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. Moving on from a pass rusher that good is absolutely wild. And getting the chance to acquire one, even if the cost is high, and I mean, the cost that second time, if you guys are as good as I think you might be next year, and the Raiders are as bad as I think they might be next year, that could be just trained back 10, 15 spots in the draft.
Yeah. I mean, and that was the other thing, is like the word is the Raiders made that trade because they thought, like, I guess it came down to like the Bears and like literally came down to like the Bears and the Packers, or like the Bears and the Rams, and they went with the Bears because they thought they'd get a higher pick out of the Bears than they would out of a Green Bay or the Rams. The Rams definitely make sense. Green Bay, not so sure, but it's like, even I would agree that that's probably going to be the case, or would have, as far as who's likely to be drafting higher in the draft. And out of those 3 teams, I would probably pick the Bears, but not by much. No. I think we're looking at a mid-round at the worst coming up next season. I think they're trying to delude themselves into thinking they're going to get themselves another top 10 pick, where the Bears have been picking the last several years. I just don't see that happening time around.
I think you guys are going to if Trubisky develops the way I think both of us think he will, next year you guys are going to be scary. You guys are going to be really scary.
That's the other thing is that, I think 2019, I've been saying this the last several weeks. I really do think 2019 is the year that the Bears will make their move. Like, I think we're going to scare some people this year. We're going to win some games we're not supposed to, but overall I think we're still somewhere, maybe 10 wins, maybe, but more likely in an 8-8, 9-7 range this year. And then next year, it's like, even if we don't go out and sign anybody in free agency or draft anybody significant, our top pick is going to be a third-round pick next year, but still, I really do think that another year in the system for Trubisky, a full offseason for Khalil Mack, and all of the rest of that stuff is really going to make all the difference in 2019. I think the Bears are going to be scary a year from, like, legit scary a year from now. So I'm definitely in agreement that a year from now we're going to be having a totally different conversation. I think the Bears will be part of the national conversation next year, as opposed to just kind of being a regional, quote unquote, sexy pick at this point in 2018. Yep,
totally agree.
So, how do you see the game coming out on Monday? It's like, what's your? I think we played this game before. Like, what's best case scenario? What's worst case scenario for the Seahawks on Monday night?
Best case scenario is Russell Wilson gets sacked twice, pressured 4 to 5 times, and therefore has got time to work. Hits for a few explosives, has a big game, avoids turnovers. You're talking about maybe a 3-touchdown, no-pick game. And the defense, we do enough to keep Trubisky rattled, and Bobby Wagner has a big game. Bobby Wagner was where he needed to be on Sunday, but he didn't flash like double-digit tackles. I think he only had 5 or 6, which for him is very low. If he is getting in there and stopping your running backs from getting to that next level, I think that's and then again, we're winning that field position battle with both our punting and the fact that maybe we can get some drives going. Maybe we don't trip over our own shoelaces on third down every time.
Yeah,
I could see
2 out of 12 on Sunday.
2 out of 12, not great.
Yeah.
Not great at all. So that's the good version for the Seahawks. The bad version is 6 more sacks. The bad version is a couple blown plays in the screen game where you pick up 40, 50 yards with Tariq Cohen or Jordan Howard 2-3 times. Maybe Trey Burton comes to play in a bigger way. Because we're okay at defending tight ends, but again, we got question marks in terms of our linebacking core right now. So we'll see. And we don't have enough weapons to get those explosives against you. You could win it by 10 pretty easily if that happens.
Okay. I'll take that.
How's that sound?
That works. Just as long as it's a W. I don't care if it's by 1 or by 10. As long as it's a win and we're not looking at 0-2 for like the 5th season in a row, I'd be very happy.
I mean, you're getting
with that.
primetime Russ. You're getting primetime Russ. So I wouldn't bank on him fumbling and doing all the nonsense he did on this last weekend. At the same time, it's a lot of young defenders playing on primetime for the first time.
Sure.
That's not great.
Yeah, so I would like to mention, not to rain on your parade.
Oh, please.
We're not going to be at altitude this time around. So I don't know.
Hey.
I don't want to take anything. I mean, 59 yards a punt is ridiculous. I'm not saying that that's all altitude. I'm saying maybe he got a little help from the altitude.
I want to be clear. Football Outsiders did altitude adjustments.
Oh, okay.
He still had the most valuable punting game of the last 2 years with the altitude adjustment. He's better at close to sea level, arguably, because he's Australian and then he went to Texas. He's more accurate when he's closer to the sea. I don't know if that's actually true. It just feels true. He might not get a 70.
That actually sounded really good until you gave it away there. You had me going there.
I will say Pete Carroll said he was worried he would outkick the coverage in Denver, and he only came close to doing that once, and then Denver held on that, and so we ended up pinning him at the 8, even though they did get away from us one time. So you watch out. I'm just saying, you want us getting into field goal range, then having Janikowski shank it, rather than being, around the 30 or 40 and having Dixon Pena on the 1.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely take that. Well, Spike, I appreciate you coming back on the show, man. It was a great conversation. Looking forward to the game on Monday night. Hope everybody comes out healthy, because I know that's been an issue for both our teams the last few years. So win or lose, everybody comes out healthy. You can take your full squad. Who are you playing week 3?
I believe we're in Arizona week 3. Or is
you
that
finally
week
playing
4?
at home week 3?
I think so. That sounds like something we do. Well, hold on. How do I not know this off the top of my head? This is embarrassing.
No, we got Arizona week 3. We got the Cowboys.
We got the Cowboys. We got the Cowboys at home, and then we go to Arizona.
I see.
Those are both those are two very broken offenses. So
Yeah.
we'll give our defense a chance to get their act together before we play the Rams. So yeah.
All right. Well, tell us where we can find you online. Where can we find the show? I'm sure you're going to be heavy on Bears talk this week.
Absolutely. We are doing a Bears preview podcast on the Locked On Seahawks. I think it'll be out today or yesterday, something like that. And I write for a paper in Seattle called The Stranger, which is our weekly paper. So if you want to read a weird recap of the game on Monday, do that. I'll tweet it out at Spike Friedman.
All right. Spike Friedman from the Locked On Seahawks podcast and The Stranger in Seattle. Thanks so much for being on the show, man. We look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Spike Friedman from the Locked On Seahawks podcast, helping us preview Bears Seahawks for Week 2 on Monday Night Football. Didn't I tell you he was going to gush over that punter? It was kind of ridiculous, wasn't it? But then again, I had a story about my favorite punter as well, so I guess we're all in the same boat when you think about it. So, but Monday night, really looking forward to this game on Sunday, just because I want to see if this team is resilient. And not only will it test the team, it's going to test Nagy. Can he rally the troops and get them to go? Can he get them to forget what happened on Sunday night and move forward? And remember, we do have 15 games left. It is a long season, and one game does not an entire season make. So, everybody's got their work cut out for them, because even though a dedicated fan like Spike Friedman doesn't expect a whole lot out of his team this year, the Seahawks, still a good football team and are very capable of beating us. You heard us talk about how, maybe the Seahawks weren't that impressive play to play, but they have the big playability. And when you look at the game against Green Bay on Sunday night, that's what did us in, was, Rodgers and company pulling off the big plays. I mean, it's not like, Rodgers led that offense charging down the field 15, 16 play drives and things like that. They took advantage of Bear mistakes, busted coverages, and so on and so forth to make big plays, and that's how they were able to make up such a large deficit in such a short period of time. And you saw that that the Seahawks were capable of that as well. Russell Wilson was 19 of 33, but threw for nearly 300 yards and had 3 touchdowns on top of it. And all 3 of those touchdowns were big plays. 51 yards to Tyler Lockett, 66 yards to that tight end, Wilsley, I think his name was. Just big plays is how Seahawks were able to keep themselves in that game. So, that's got to be the number one key for the Bears. After suffering big plays to Rodgers and Green Bay on Sunday, and watching the film that they've most definitely watched from Sunday afternoon on the Seahawks and the Broncos, you got to avoid giving up the big play. You got to avoid, you can't make those kinds of mistakes against these kinds of quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, even though he hasn't been having as much success as of late, still one of the better quarterbacks, probably, on the fringe of that elite level. He definitely was before, when Seattle was really banging as a team. Now it's the Russell Wilson show, and he's trying to get everybody to kind of rally around him. He's still the best player on that team and very capable of gashing and hurting the Bears whenever possible. So we need to definitely make sure everybody's where they need to be. Everybody knows who their man is, where their coverage zone is, and so on and so forth, to avoid having that happen to us once again. So, because we went into the fourth quarter with a 20-3 lead going into the fourth quarter, and it was gone in the blink of an eye. Because I think the Bears actually won the time of possession battle in the fourth quarter against Green Bay, but Green Bay still managed to score 21 points in the fourth quarter to win that football game. And it was all big plays. 75 yards to Cobb, that 40-yard touchdown pass to some dude named Geronimo, and the Devontae Adams touchdown as well. So, it's just we got to avoid the big play. We can't be susceptible to you definitely don't want to be that defense To tell you the truth, man, if I had a choice, between being a defense that was kind of the swinging gate, if you will, like the one the Bears had years ago where we gave up like 900 yards a game rushing on defense, I would much rather be that team that basically can't get off the field as opposed to that defense that goes out there and keeps giving up 50 and 60-yard plays, because there's nothing more gut-wrenching than just watching, than having that big play, because there's so much that happens because of it. There's number one, there's the scoring, there's the points, and then number two, the momentum. You take your crowd out of the game or you bring their crowd into it. I mean, a lot happens and a lot changes, on those big plays, and we saw that happen on Sunday night against the Packers. We definitely want to avoid that in front of our own people on Monday night as well. And then really the only other key that I can think of is basically we're going based off of Sunday night and Green Bay, because we saw a lot of things that we liked a lot, especially in the first half. Of course, basically we just need to be as aggressive in the first half as we were in the first half of that Green Bay game. Just stay after them. Finish. And especially on offense, we need to finish drives, put them in the end zone, and stop settling for field goals. That's where the aggressive part comes in. Stay aggressive and be smarter as well. Jesus Christ, man. We had 3rd and 1 twice in the fourth quarter. We threw the football both times. Or was it the third quarter? Either way, we're throwing the football on 3rd and 1 when we got Jordan Howard back there. And, this was an offense that was running on 3rd and 8 last year. We can't run on 3rd and 1 now? Come on, let's not be too clever, man. If you got to, as useless as he can be, we got Michael Burton at fullback. Put him back there. Line him up in front of Jordan Howard, run forward and get those 3 feet. That's all you need to do. We don't have to get cute and reinvent the wheel and try to figure out some snazzy way to get 3rd and 1. Just give the football to our Pro Bowl running back and let him get that yard for us. He ran like a beast when we did give him the football on Sunday. So give him the opportunity to get us that yard, move the sticks, keep the football, give the defense the rest that they need so that they can go out there and be aggressive when it's their time to be out there. So that's really all I have. We just we need to avoid giving up the big play. Easier said than done, just because those things just happen in the blink of an eye for whatever reason. One missed mistake, one missed assignment, so on and so forth. But we have to avoid that from happening on Monday, because we're definitely playing a team that's capable of it. That's how they stayed in the game with Denver on Sunday, not because they had those long methodical drives where they were up and down the field, but because they took advantage of those opportunities that Denver gave them, and the Broncos allowed. Because if you look at the stats, Russell Wilson was sacked 6 times. He threw 2 or 3 interceptions in that game, and yet the Broncos only won by 3 points. The Broncos dominated the time of possession by 11 minutes, 10 minutes, 35 to 25 on Sunday. Statistically, across the board, they should have won by 20 points instead of just 3. Why did they only win by 3? Because they gave up those big plays to Wilson and the offense. So it was those with all that the Denver Broncos did to keep Wilson and the Seahawks down. They only gave up 3 big plays in that whole game, and those 3 big plays were the difference between winning by 30 and winning in a nail biter by a field goal. So that is definitely what the Bears want to avoid on Sunday, is that when we have somebody down the way that we had Green Bay down on Sunday, you do whatever you can to keep them down. No taking the foot off the gas. This isn't the preseason. Stay aggressive, win the game, close them out. There you go. So that will do it for the Week 2 preview episode of the Bears Talk Underground. Looking forward to coming back on Tuesday with the review, and hopefully it will be our first Victory Tuesday. Or actually our only Victory Tuesday, because we only play one Monday night game this year, but our very first victory episode, let's say, of the Bears Talk Underground. We'll be back to review the game, knee-jerk reactions, so on and so forth, bear ups and bear downs. Make sure you come back. Don't miss it. Until then, my name is Larry D, and this has been Bears Talk Underground.